Jake, my gym instructor, wasn't just any trainer. He had this magnetic presence, the kind that made everyone in the room notice when he walked in. He wasn't just about perfect form or counting representatives. He made you feel seen, as though you were the most important person in the room. For someone like me, stuck in a marriage that had become more about routine than romance, that kind of attention was intoxicating. I'd find excuses to come to class early, hoping to catch him alone. During sessions, I'd make sure to be the one asking questions, needing him to adjust my posture, to notice me, and he did. Every compliment he gave, "You're stronger than you think," or "your form is looking great," felt like a jolt of adrenaline. It wasn't just about fitness anymore. One evening, as we were wrapping up, Jake gave me a look, a lingering, intense gaze that lingered just a bit too long. He stepped closer, his voice low as he offered tips for improvement. "You're doing great," he said, his breath warm against my skin. My heart raced, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't just imagining the chemistry between us. When he asked if I wanted to grab a drink, I froze. I should have said no. I should have remembered my husband, my vows, my life, but the weight of monotony and years of feeling unnoticed was heavy. Temptation doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers in the most inviting voice. "Yeah," I said, my voice trembling. "I'd like that." That night changed everything. It was like a dam broke, and everything I'd been holding back came flooding out. At first, I told myself it was just harmless fun, a bit of excitement in an otherwise predictable life. But every encounter with Jake chipped away at my excuses. His touch lingered, his words teased, and I found myself craving him in a way that terrified me. I wanted to feel this moment, this thrill, this undeniable pull that Jake had over me. We left the bar together, walking side by side in the cool evening air. The silence between us was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, electric, alive. Every step felt like a step closer to something I couldn't take back. Yet I did care. Jake's car was parked just a few blocks away, and when we reached it, he turned to me, his eyes searching mine as if waiting for permission, for a sign that I was willing to follow through. I hesitated for just a moment, my mind flickering to Mark, to our life together, to the years we had built. But that voice, the one that always reminded me of my responsibilities, was drowned out by the pounding of my heart and the heat pooling low in my stomach. Without a word, Jake leaned in, his lips brushing mine softly at first, testing the waters. But when I didn't pull away, he deepened the kiss, his hands sliding to my waist, pulling me against him. The world around us seemed to fade until there was nothing but the feel of his lips, the strength of his arms, the way he made me feel alive. He opened the car door, and before I could second-guess myself, I climbed in. The drive to his place was a blur. My heart raced as I tried to process what I was doing, but there was no turning back now. I had made my choice, and part of me didn't regret it, not yet. When we arrived at his apartment, it was like all the tension that had been building between us finally exploded. The moment the door shut behind us, Jake had me pinned against it, his lips crashing into mine, his hands roaming my body in a way that left me breathless. It wasn't just the physical connection, it was the way he made me feel wanted, desired, needed. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just a wife, a partner, a routine. I was a woman, and Jake reminded me of that with every touch, every kiss, every whispered word. That night was everything I didn't know I had been craving. It was passionate, raw, and all-consuming. But as the adrenaline began to fade and the reality of what I had done started to sink in, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. Jake lay beside me, his arm draped over my waist, his breathing steady and content, but my mind was miles away, back with Mark, back to the life I had so carelessly jeopardized. I knew I had crossed a line that I could never uncross. The question now was, what would I do about it? When I got home that night, the weight of my actions hit me like a freight train. Mark was asleep on the couch, the TV still on, his face peaceful and unaware. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at him, wondering how I could have done this to him, to us. But the guilt didn't stop me from seeing Jake again. It became a cycle, an addiction. Every time I told myself it would be the last, that I'd walk away, I found myself back in his arms, craving the escape he provided. And every time I came home, I had to face the quiet destruction I was wreaking on my marriage. Mark eventually started noticing the changes, the late nights, the distant looks, the way I avoided his touch. He wasn't stupid. He confronted me one night, his voice shaky but firm, asking if there was someone else. I wanted to deny it, to lie, to salvage what was left of our marriage, but the guilt was too heavy to carry. Yes, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. There's someone else. The look on Mark's face will haunt me forever, the pain, the betrayal, the disbelief. It was like I had ripped his heart out and handed it to him. He didn't yell or scream. He just nodded, his face pale, and walked away. That was the moment I realized what I had truly lost. It wasn't just my marriage, it was the man who had loved me unconditionally, who had been there for me through everything. And for what? A fleeting moment of passion? A temporary escape? Jake didn't destroy my marriage, I did. My choices, my selfishness, my inability to face the issues in my relationship, those were the real culprits. And now, as I sit here alone, replaying everything in my mind, I wonder if I'll ever forgive myself for what I've done.